Hello.
Good afternoon. Just had to enable my camera.
Yeah. Jasper, have I said it right?
Yes. In
Close,
Dutch,
okay.
in Dutch it's Jasper, but that's
Jasper.
a little bit
Okay.
difficult. So Jasper is perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying my best, so. Okay, so thank you for joining us and thank you for having you here.
Thank you.
As you guys can see, we have a lot of interesting topics all over the place with this stage. Now we are going to have a look over the Google Workspace and what Google brings to us. We have here a developer and an expert with a lot of experience.
Thank you.
From what I've seen here, so really glad to have you here with us.
Yeah.
Any emotions? Nervous?
Well, it's different. Online is always. I always miss the interaction with the people. Well, obviously I'm talking to you now. That's perfect. But the audience. So my question from my side, please type something in the chat if there's a question. Then I can react immediately. I will be distracted for a second if something is in the chat. But nervous, always.
Yeah, usually having a bit of emotions is good because it means you care.
Yes, that's very true, and I care very much about the subject. And I've done this presentation before, actually 2 times in Romania. Yes, so for some it might be new, but I'm very passionate about this subject. So
yeah, so really glad we have you here. So people, please ask your questions. I will, if it's needed, I will intervene and help with the questions being sent to the speaker. So
perfect.
I will help you with that one. Then I think the stage is yours.
Okay.
Sure, to start.
I should share my screen for the presentation, I assume.
It would be helpful.
Thank you. Well, I'm kind of new to this platform, so
I can understand, so that's why no worries.
I hope I'm okay like this.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay, great. Then I'll start my presentation. Calendar to Analytics, Google Workspace Add-on, Google Cloud, and Looker Studio integration. That's the subject for my presentation. And well, that's the first mistake. Yeah, this one. And I would like to start with this quote because it kind of sets the stage for this presentation. It's a quote from Abraham Lincoln. And basically, what is he saying here is make sure your tooling is sharp, literally. And I like the quote because if you're using tooling, it should be sharp, but it also should be placed in the context. So if you look at today, we have different tools to chop down a tree. So today, if I would chop down a tree, first of all, I would like to know if it actually needs to be chopped down. That's also something. But the other thing would be that, okay, what kind of tools do I have? And in this case, I might go and fetch a chainsaw that Abraham didn't have. So one of the settings for this presentation is think about the tooling and think also about the visibility of the product. It's a little bit of a segue to the picture in this slide. So we're looking at an iceberg, and well, it's a metaphor, of course, but the metaphor is for a lot of things that we build, people only see the top. And the actual difficulty is underneath. The 90% is under the water. People don't see that.
Bye.
Again, it's a metaphor, maybe a little bit
so
cliche. However, keep that metaphor in mind.
So now let's
setting the stage
our next speaker.
Let me introduce myself. I'm Jasper Duizendstra. I'm a Google Cloud architect, a Google developer expert. I work a lot with Google Workspace. And Google Workspace has small customers, all kinds of customers, and also enterprise customers. And Especially for the enterprise customers, you quickly move into data. If you want to do a migration or consolidation project, you need to collect data to run that project. If you have like 150,000 users you want to migrate, you want to know something about those users, and you cannot do that with a spreadsheet. So basically that way I ended up working more and more with data. But still, Google Workspace is my comfort zone where I like to build stuff. I'm also an independent freelancer, so I work for multiple customers. I love that because working for multiple customers, you get the synergy. You see what happens at one customer, and you can utilize that knowledge at the other customer and vice versa. So enough about me. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. It's always interesting. For me, it's also important to get exposure as a freelancer. So moving on to the next slide. Basically, switching gears a bit here. And what I would like to start is to position how you work with data in an environment. And that can be a large environment, small environment. To get that understandable for myself, I created this model. And this model, it has 4 components. And during the presentation, I will walk and have examples of all those components and explain how they are important. So this is the big picture. So if we look at the left part, these are the transactional systems. So transactional systems are where stuff happens. So that could be the inventory management, where your inventory is managed, or CRM, or your e-commerce platform, the web shop, stuff like that. I also put a one-liner there to position it more. Like, these systems need to be lean and mean and scope to do what they do best, meaning they do transactions. It's not so much about collecting data, it's more about managing the transactions, and collecting data comes later. So if you look at the part of collecting data, you can look at the analytical system. So the analytical system basically looks at the data, collects the data, harvests the data, and transforms that into information. So that would be an ELT process, where you have connectors to different transactional systems. You move that into a data lake or data mesh, depending on what you like. Then you do some kind of transformation. Then you have your data warehouses or your data marts, and you have collected your information. Then moving on here, you can look at your BI system. So BI system is actually doing something, creating business value, which are based on your information. And that could be a unified dashboard. It could be ad hoc analysis. It could be AI. We are on the AI stage. So AI is great. Love it. To do AI, you need data. So that's a part of this presentation. Like, okay, how will you collect the data? How can you make it ready for AI to do something? It's also about making decisions. So these decisions, they kind of need approval, and you need to govern your data. That's always important in an organization. So your data starts in a transactional system. The analytical system collects the data, and the BI system creates the business value. In that same picture, you need some kind of integration system. So you need to be able to integrate your transactional system with your analytical system, with your BI system. Again, further on in the presentation, I will focus on each block. But the integration system basically connects everything with everything. And it could be, for example, that some information in the transactional system is analyzed. Based on that, something else needs to be changed, and it's fed back to the transactional system. So to make this a little bit more, oh, sorry, this is another slide. I was a little bit surprised. Switching gears again, AI. I fed this model into AI and blown away. Basically, AI analyzed the model, told me exactly what it was supposed to be. And then I asked ChatGPT in this case, like, can you create a model for me? This is what I created. I just wanted to show that. This is like 3 months ago that I created this, so by now it might be outdated, but I find it interesting to see what AI thinks of this situation. Okay, I would like to visualize this, and to do so, I've created a demo where I also link back to Google Workspace. So switching to the demo, what you're looking at here is a Google Calendar in my demo environment. And basically, this whole application, this whole demo came out of frustration. Because as a freelancer, and I've been working like billable hours for quite a long time now, I always needed to write time. And I haven't found any time writing system that really works well, that you have open all day. It's either, well, let's not go to the NetSuites or the Twin Fields or something. There are some that are nice, but at the end, most of them, I don't like them. So what I've developed here is a transactional system. That's putting it back to the model. A transactional system where I focus on a lean and mean environment where I write time in my calendar, because I have my calendar open every day. This is not my real calendar. This is a demo system. So how it works, at the right, you have a Google add-on, which is a Workspace add-on. And it's a small program that you can build, that you can publish to a marketplace, and it adds some functionality either to your calendar or Google Drive or Google Sheets. In this case, Google Calendar. So my workflow is very simple. My calendar is open daily. I have a list of my clients. In this case, some clients, again, generated by AI. And then I create a new event. Technology is never perfect. In this case, it's very quick. It can take a second for this entry to show up in the calendar, because this is how Workspace add-ons work. I'll create a new event, maybe for another customer. And so basically, workflow, very simple. I've spent an hour with the customer. Ideally, I had a meeting in my calendar, so it's next to my meeting. And then it was around here, and it was around 2 hours. So now I've written my time, transactional system, I'm done, lean and mean. Then moving on, I want to analyze this information. So what I've done is I've created a pipeline, which I'll explain in detail later, where I move this data from the calendar API into a pub subtopic, into BigQuery. And BigQuery, I do a little bit of transformation, and further on, I create my report. So if I refresh this data, it should, it's always a demo, it should show some new information. And there it is. These are the times I've just written. So this is looping back a little bit to Google Workspace, where I've built an application, which is, for me, is a transactional system. But this transactional system generates information, which I want to report, but also analyze. So, and at some point, maybe even fed back, not maybe, I actually do that, feed it back into another transactional system, which is my billing and financial system. Again, as a freelancer, it's not a very big setup. It works for me. So going back to the presentation, back to the model. So positioning this application, the Google Calendar add-on, again, to the model. The transactional system is one of these. So it's maybe CRM or ERP, don't know really, but it's a transactional system. This transactional system feeds the analytical system. So the analytical system, it gets the information through a connector, puts it in a data lake, transformation, very simple one in this case, but it can be very complex if you have lots of information. Also important here, you want to start combining information, which in this case is not relevant, but in other examples, it can become very relevant. Then I put it in my data warehouse and I create my unified dashboard. Then I make some decisions, and based on an integration systems, which I'll explain later, I feed it back into my financial system. So this is putting the application back into the setup of the model. So switching gears again, it's about technology, it's about functionality. This is more on how it works. How it works is we have a Google Calendar. That's not specifically Google Cloud Platform. It's more like one of the other Google services. This Google Calendar feeds a PubSub event. Actually, there is some connector in between, but this is like high level. So the PubSub event basically creates a stream or a topic where I have streaming data. And that's quite important in this setup, because once you transform data into streaming data, then you can go into two directions. You can start collecting the data in an analytical system, which in this case is BigQuery, or you can start doing things with those events, because the streams, they are events. So in this case, I'll focus more on the analytical part. And from here on, it's actually configuration, which I really love in the Google Cloud Platform. So this part I had to build, which is actually a piece of app script, Google App Script in this case. And that publishes the information to a topic, and the topic automatically feeds it into the BigQuery system. Then with BigQuery, you do the transformation, which would be data form, which puts the information back into BigQuery and feeds it into Looker Studio. If you look at the scope for this application, by the way, in my setup, this is totally free. It's all below all the free tiers and cost nothing. Okay, a little bit more focus on the transactional system. And the tagline here is the core business operations. So if I talk to a customer and I look at their environment, I look at their whole setup from an infrastructure perspective, and I try to identify their core business systems, which can be anything. It can be a spreadsheet even. A lot of companies still run lots of their business on spreadsheet, but it could also be an old mainframe system with some wrappers, or it could be, ideally, it would be something that's already in the Google Cloud, because then it's easy to connect. If it's somewhere on-premise, then it becomes difficult. But that's all the problem of the connector. So how do you connect with your transactional system? And the case here is to make sure that you identify it as a transactional system. And if you look at it from that perspective, you also easily identify cases where they're using transactional system more like an analytical system. Sometimes that's not a problem. If you look at you can see trends there also, like LODB. There you can do more analytical stuff, but it has one big drawback, and it's usually one application with one dashboard. So you can see what happens in that specific application. So in the web shop, you can see what has been sold for that specific web shop, but you cannot connect it to your inventory system, for example, or your financial system. So usually it's focused on one transactional system, and it can also bloat the application. So sometimes it actually makes a lot of sense to start removing information out of the transactional system just to make them lean and mean, especially the lean part. So few examples here on this transactional systems, your HR system. So for example, if you have an identity system, you can start collecting your identities. So who is doing what kind of access. HRMS is usually feeding a identity system like Azure AD, or I forgot the new name, or Google Identity. ERP system, SAP, stuff like that. Inventory management, CRM, and e-commerce platforms. Nice example here would be, I forgot the name of that one also, sorry. I've connected to one web shop where just simply connecting to the API, you collect the data, put it in BigQuery, and then you can start combining it with inventory management. Magento, that was the name. Okay, I don't see any questions yet. I would love interaction, but I'll continue anyway. So putting this whole application, the Google Calendar add-on, more into a transactional system. So I'm isolating it now. Okay, how is this add-on actually built? High level again. And thank you, Chris. Then Google Workspace Marketplace, an add-on, you can publish it on the marketplace. So nice thing about add-ons, also about Google Workspace, it scales. So the add-on is user-based, and if you install the add-on, it runs as you. So it doesn't really matter if one person runs it or 100,000 persons run it. The performance is the same. Then all of these add-ons, those installations, those instances, they feed the GCP project. That's something that scales. PubSub scales to incredible amounts. Nothing. It's like with this application, it's nothing for PubSub. But from this moment on, I have it in an environment where I can actually do interesting stuff with the information. And again, remember here at this point, it becomes streaming. Then the add-on, well, it's also connected to the Marketplace API. Here, Google Calendar, it connects to Google Apps Script, and here it actually sends the information to PubSub. So this is my transactional system. Then the analytical system. So now we're talking data. And one way I like to think about an analytical system is basically literally how the brain works. So in the brain, you have two systems. One system is an instant system. So if you're driving or walking and you see something happening, somebody throws a ball at you or something falls, you react immediately. You don't think, you just instinctively act, and you don't start thinking like, should I react or something else like that. This AI plays a big role in this basically because those decisions can be wrong. AI is triggered like, okay, recognize the situation and act immediately. Analytical system is more system 2. So again, you're driving on the road and you have the idea of, hey, I'm hungry. And then you see a billboard, McDonald's or anything, and you're like, should I go to McDonald's? I already had a hamburger yesterday, not so smart. So you start analyzing your data, and you can take your time for that. And that's very important by analytical systems. They take their time. So they might be fed by streaming data, and some parts are important from a immediate base, but those usually fall in a different system, not in the analytical system. And it's very okay to have a batch system that during the night transforms all the data of the past days and increments the data of the last year. If you have a car rental business, you're interested in how many accidents do you have in a year, but your dashboard doesn't need to show for the whole year just that accident that happened a minute ago. But from another perspective, yes, you should have a dashboard that shows you, hey, an accident happened, I need to act on it immediately. But that's not the analytical system. Analytical is really harvest the data, analyze it, combine the different transactional systems, and then make your decisions. This is also where AI shines, because you can use this to train your models. Okay, analytical system, switching back to my application, how does the analytical system works? First of all, here I grayed it out, but it's being fed by the transactional, and it supports the BI system. Very simple here, PubSub, BigQuery, Cloud Scheduler, data form, BigQuery. So PubSub is a stream of information that is fed into BigQuery as is configuration. Cloud Scheduler basically says, okay, every night I need to do a transformation. And this transformation is done in data form. Love the product. And then the information is fed back to BigQuery. I'll quickly switch to this screen to show a little bit how that works, just a little bit. So basically here you have a topic, and if I put it back to 1 hour, we see some messages. Those are the ones that I just published, and they're shown here. And here I have a export. Let me see if I can show that. It is basically just write it to BigQuery. So this is also an important part, switching back to the first quote. This is about using the right tool. I can easily write a transformation to put this into BigQuery. I can write my own API, but by putting PubSub in the middle, I have two big advantages. Well, more, but two major ones. One is it becomes streaming data. So I can have different subscriptions for the same streaming data. Show an example later. And I can just, by configuration, immediately write it into BigQuery. And if we go to BigQuery, and then I'll stop the technical part, that would be this one. And you can see here I have a events table, and here you can see those events into the streaming buffer. Okay, going back to the next slide, then the BI system. So BI system, this is where the actually thinking happens. So your analytical system, it's not so much where the thinking happens, but it can be a slow system where you collect the information, like the census. You collect your information, and this information, you model it, you put it in categories, and then you start making decisions based on that information. So put that in the model. You have one big thing here, and it feeds the BI system where you can do some dashboarding, and it feeds the system back with the information that we just created. A great example here that I had at one of my customers is basically where they combine the inventory management and the web shop and some other systems. So we've built some connectors. One of them was Magento. Then all of those connectors, they feed the information into the analytical system. And the whole goal here was to see what is the effect on purchases related to the inventory. And well, pretty obvious, if there's no inventory, you cannot sell anything. But deciding what to actually order is pretty difficult. For that, you need to analyze the information. So another customer, for example, he buys stuff in China, and sometimes a ship gets stuck or hits a bridge or something, and then things happen. So in his system, we need to look at the purchase orders, and then we collect that information, and sometimes the dates there change, and then we know when a product gets delivered. If you combine all that information, Google Analytics is also a source here, which, by the way, switching a little bit gears again, but Google Analytics is a perfect example where the whole ingest is being handled for you. The information just magically appears into BigQuery if you configure it right. Combining all that information, you can basically make a graph, and you can predict what happens. And if you combine it, you can also say, okay, these are the parameters for another transactional system, usually the ERP system. And then you're looking at minimum stock, maximum stock, and lead time. And those three numbers are extremely important, but getting to those numbers, therefore, you need a lot of data. Okay, then the last part of making this all work together is the integration system. So if you look at your integration system, I call it the process coordination system center. It makes sure everything connects to each other. And Here we're more, if we take the parallel again with how the brain works, this is more like system one and your senses. So system one, the integration system, it acts immediately. So if you take my calendar example again, I collect information from my calendar. That's almost immediate. Then I transform it into a stream using PubSub, ingest it into BigQuery, and do my analytical stuff. But in the same situation, I can also connect something else to that PubSub event. Well, in the calendar application, there's not really a good example, a good use case. I did test it with application integration. I just made a simple situation where under certain conditions, I'm sending an email well, that's the integration part. But for the car company example, it becomes way more interesting because basically you can transform the information about your cars into streams and ingest them again to your analytical system, do your nice stuff there. But on the other hand, if some car gets into an accident, you want to just get a side stream and do something immediately. And that could be another transactional system. So that could be, well, maybe send an email to the dispatch. Well, maybe not an email, but do something immediately with that information. So that's more like system one. Another example would be where you sell something in your web shop and immediately you want the stock to be well, go down one, or depending on the amount you sell. So it's very important to make a distinction in between those two systems, and especially if you start using your analytical system as a integration system, as an immediate system, then it starts slowing down because the analytical system, it's slow. So it could happen that somebody orders a printer, and the analytical system finds the order, and then a few minutes later it puts it in the database, and a few minutes later it is updated in the web shop that the stock is one less, or maybe zero, even worse. For that, you need to use a different system. So identifying those are very important. Switching back to the model again, to position it again. So the integration system, it is kind of in the middle. It talks with the transactional systems, it talks with the analytical system if needed, and it talks with the BI system. So in the example of the car company, something happens in one of the transactional systems, the integration system picks it up and it immediately feeds it back into the integration system. The connectors, they can be both ways. So it can be an integration system connector that feeds back into the analytical system, or it can be a connector that feeds back this way in the calendar example. Perfect. Then a little bit for my reality, because building applications, working with infrastructure, it is hard. So one of the things I've put in my presentation is how I actually do this and what's my integration system. And this is a very simple reality. I use MoneyMonk, it's a Dutch application for my financial system. And it's actually a beautiful system, except for the time writing part. It also does not have an API, but as a transactional system, it does almost everything perfectly the way I want it to do, except for the time writing part. So what I actually do at the end of the month, I go to this overview, I look at my hours, and then I copy paste this information into my transactional system, simply because my financial system doesn't have a connector with the, I cannot connect with it. The only connector is like a human being, myself. And that can be a reality. It can sometimes be a spreadsheet. If you look at the way you can integrate BigQuery with spreadsheet, it's amazing, because yeah, you can just make it a table where you can store some information. So sometimes you need to be really pragmatic and make sure that you identify the systems right. So is this the correct transactional system? What are the pros? What are the cons? Am I not using it as an analytical system? And sometimes you need to make some decisions, like it can be a copy paste model. I'm seeing that I'm a little bit quicker than I expected. Any questions so far? I'm not going to do a long, awkward silence, but no questions yet.
Not yet, yes.
Not yet. Thank you. Well, then I'll just move on to another slide. This is a slide where I try to identify, not try, I show as a developer in this environment what you actually need to know. And so while creating this demo, creating this presentation, I started to list down all the toolings that the tools and applications that I was using. So for example, Clasp is a tool where you can do some nice management of Google Apps Script stuff, curl. Well, you can go on the list. At some point, I stopped actually writing it down because it became too much. But it's interesting to see how many disciplines as a developer or as an architect you actually need to understand, at least to a certain degree. I'm going to do the coffee. Yeah. Then for me, cloud and workspace. So if you look at Google Cloud and Google Workspace, I love it because they work very well together. So one thing, Workspace is the identity platform for the Google Cloud. The Cloud Identity is just another form of Workspace. Don't quote me on that one, but that's how I see it. And the Google Cloud, well, it's the Google Cloud, but the identities in the Google Cloud, they are in Workspace. So it's very easy to connect a identity to a service account and to do something again in another application. I mentioned it before, but it's really important for me, is the option to have a Google Sheet and make it part of your analytical system. Very simple. If I do a migration, I work with accounts or I work with divisions. Sometimes that information is not even in the transactional systems, or I just want to keep some information about a specific account. You just create a Google spreadsheet, you put the accounts there, you connect it as a table and make it part of your ELT, excuse me. And then you can just reuse the information in your analytical system. Quickly going through the list here, Cloud IDE. I think I saw one presentation where somebody also was using the Cloud IDE. Love the tool. It's extremely sharp. It has a lot of advantages, a few small disadvantages. Let me see. Looker Studio as a presentation layer. So that's also very nice if you work in the Google Cloud and Workspace. So connecting Looker Studio, transforming the data with Dataform, and reporting on the information with Looker Studio. It's seamless, and you can share the reports with the Google Workspace accounts. Concept and practices. Here I really got tired with noting it down, but still I did a few. So for example, the concept of partitioning. If you work with the Google Cloud and BigQuery, you need to do some partitioning. Time series. What I see a lot in analytical systems is that they're using the latest record only. And once you start working with time series, the things change. So especially with the Magento connection, what we did there was Magento has only the concept of the stock at this moment. And so you can call the API and then you have the stock of that moment. Nice. But you do not know the stock of yesterday. So if you start putting that in a time series, then you are also collecting information that's not actually in Magento anymore. There you also need to be careful because you do not want to lose that data. But then you have the stock of yesterday, the stock of the day before, and you can see changes in stock for different applications. Infrastructure as code, well, lots of things going on around Terraform. Also love the concept there, working together with the Google Cloud. If you want to deploy this, if you want to maintain it, it's also very nice if you can program it using a tool, an ESA tool like Terraform or Plumio. Then last slide of this presentation, the takeaways. So I've done a lot of talking high level mostly. If anybody's interested in the technical stuff, in the more in deep dive, feel free to connect. I always love to explain more the specific components or other perspectives. But the takeaways is integrate on data. So what I mean with integrate on data is if you want to make sure the informations, the systems on an analytical part work well together, don't connect the systems with each other. Don't connect the Magento with the inventory system with the ERP system. Put something in the middle, unless it's immediate. There's a huge difference there. So you have your system one, which is immediate. I sell something on my web shop, immediately the stock needs to go down, but not more than that. If you want to start analyzing stuff, make sure you collect your data, put it in some transformation, and integrate on that part. Then make sure each system is tuned to its role. So this is actually somewhere where you can look back on the second, but you can also identify problems in systems. So if you have a bloated database in an applications, usually it's because people are afraid to throw away the data because they don't have it somewhere else. But still, the system is then not tuned on its role. It is also an analytical system because they keep the data there. It is also important if you take this, some applications, they tend to do it all. But not all very well. Sometimes they do that because they need the combination of that information. In that case, you can also start looking at, can I separate the applications and again, integrate on data. Then the last, for me, modeling things, thinking high level makes it more clear. So this model, there's actually a new iteration where I base it more on system one and system two thinking, how the brain works, but that's really conceptual. But this one, you can position things. So actually with one of my customers, I saw where they used the analytical system as a transactional system, basically acting immediately on the events in the analytical system. And using this model, I can easily explain why it was causing problems for them. And on a conceptual level, escaping all technology, just explaining this is the reason why you do not want to do that. Technically, it's possible, just not okay. So this was my presentation. Think we can move to questions. I'm looking for, yeah, perfect. The host, yeah.
Hey, let's see now. Okay, can you send us all the slides?
That's always if you send me the recording, so no, I'm kidding. Yes, shall I send it to you and can you distribute it? Is that an option?
Yes, sure, I can do that. Or you can also discuss with the organizers you were in contact with, and we can then forward it also. So if it's easier for you.
Yes. As I said before, and this is a little bit of a sales talk, my English is failing me here, but It's also okay to connect on LinkedIn and ask me for the slides, because I'm happy to share them. I will share them, but for me it's also it's about the interaction, because the slides, they need if you only look at the slides, maybe they don't even make sense. It's about the voiceover. So I'm happy with the recording. It's the first time this presentation is recorded, but of course, yes, I will share the slides.
Okay. Then I think it's gonna be okay, and the recordings will be provided to the attendees at a later moment, so they will still
Perfect.
see this information already.
Okay, yeah. No, this is why life is. I love this. I love this setup. By the way, it's very relaxing to sit at home and do the presentation and have a cup of coffee. But the other side, seeing an audience and pointing out is always a little bit is also nice. But if there are any questions, like I said, feel free to connect. I love to talk about this subject. It's part of my job, and. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, and I think it was really an interesting topic, way to see how we can use all these tools in a much more pragmatic way, not just general information on things that we can do. Okay, here is something that had happened.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed seeing this kind of presentation as well. So
Thank you.
thank you very much for this one. And I think I see that also the attendees appreciate your presentation. So great
Am I
job.
looking? Okay. Am I looking in the wrong chat then? Or
There are several chats. There is for general, for stage, and most of them are on the stage.
okay, then I'll check that late. Oh, okay, yeah, I see it. Perfect. Oh,
So
okay, yeah. Sorry, was
thank you
distracted.
very much.
Thank you, and
And
hope to see thanks for the organization. I always love the presentations in the live sessions and these sessions in Romania. So
okay,
thank you.
then maybe see you next time in Romania physically.
Would love that. Always happy to go there.
Okay, thank you
Thank
for
you.
having you.